Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vinny is back with Card 5 Vanguard deck professor because you're to like, comment, subscribe, and subscribe. This time we're covering set 13 Dragon Empire Spinomarquis. Ah, yes, that feels so good to finally say. Bushi finally gave Takikazes the appreciation they deserve, even though they screwed them over in Zero and didn't give them Gaia. I still don't know why Bushi did that, but whatever. But this time, even though it is a promo, it's the thought that counts, they gave Takikaze a main grade 3 in D, and that is Spinomarquis, and he is amazing. He calls Dino Dragons, he kills them like Engorge, and he calls more like Gaia used to do, and he kills rear guards all at once, and it's a beautiful thing. So let's go ahead and get this started, shall we, and see what we got. First up, we have our starter in Surprise Egg, grades of a boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto enrolled opponent. If you win second, draw a card. Standard starter, but that's just a free draw if you win second. You can really make this any starter you want because there is no quote-unquote ride line for this deck, so the deck doesn't really require a Surprise Egg, but I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to run Surprise Egg in my Nirvana decks, and I didn't have the space for it because of the Trickstar thing, so I run Surprise Egg pretty much in every deck I get the chance to, so one of him in my ride deck. Then we have our Overtrigger in Dragon Deity, King of Resurgence, Drag Veda, grades of a boost, 50k shield, 5k power, Overtrigger, you move Overtrigger in your deck. When you reveal that trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of you, it gets +1 for the turn, and if you reveal it during a draft check, activate its additional effect, which you can choose one of your Vanguards to stand it. All around a pretty solid skill, because regardless if you damage check it or draft check, you get a free 1 million in draws, and defensively, pretty much shuts down everything, and offensively, well, unless your opponent has a PG, whatever thing you gave the 1 million to is going through, and the fact that you get to stand a Vanguard who doesn't have a once per turn on attack ability is great, because that means you can kill multiple rear guards a turn with him, and you get to call multiple rear guards in total for 5 attacks, which all around is pretty solid. Granted, it does eat a little bit away at your CB, but it's a pretty good offensive thing to pull. Sadly, I never get to pull this off because I end up drawing this normally way too often, but it's in the sense like I draw and it helps me defend myself. So all around, the Overtrigger is pretty solid. You can run Volnut for more multi-attack consistency, or you could run, Isphoria for more consistency, or not, well, for more overall consistency. But the thing is, though, if you're going to go for multi-attack consistency, just run Drake Veda over Volnut, because the only thing Volnut would provide is less attacks, actually, compared to Drag Veda does, unless you don't have CB, so one of Drag Veda. Then we have our normal triggers. First, we run 3 critical triggers and conduct Spark Dragon, grades of a boost, 15k shield, 5k power. This helps run for extra pressure, and especially when you're doing Vanguard attacks that can get more multi-attack out of it, you definitely want to see crits. You can really make this any crit you want, but I chose to make it Conduct Spark Dragon just because, A, it's the OG, like, set 1 crit that I haven't seen in a while, so I'm out as well. Then, of course, we run 4 copies of Burning Fellow Dragon, grades to a boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger, auto-rate the amount of boost to put it to soul, choose one of each, 2k for the turn. That 2k doesn't really do anything, except for specific situations where you have a very specific board of mainly grade 1s, but on the bright side, though, it can help increase numbers if you really need it to, and it also goes to soul, which is helpful because I tell you what, this deck is like, it goes okay-ish on first grade 3 turn. It either goes really good or it goes okay-ish. Then second grade 3 turn is pretty much a swap. Like if it went okay-ish on the first grade 3 turn, it's going to hit hard on the second grade 3 turn. But if it went like really hard on the first grade 3 turn, it's going to hit okay-ish on the second grade 3 turn. And then third grade 3 turn is pretty much where you're just fighting to survive and it's like a bare knuckle fight to the death. Like whoever goes down first goes down. And that's where I love like the Burning Flow coming in, because when it gets to that moment, this deck takes every single last bit of resource it has and it will fight to the death, and it's fun to watch. So and it's fun to play as too. So we run 7 crits in total for that little bit of pressure, and it does help to have Burning Flow for Soul Fodder because that deck does end up starting to use Soul in that late game. And we have 4 draws and Rushing Dragon, Steel Difolo. Grids of a boost, 5k shield, 5k base. It is a Dino Dragon. Now, this is here for 2 reasons over the effect draw trigger. It is here because it's a Dino Dragon as the theme-wise, but it's also here because it's a Dino Dragon archetype-wise, or not archetype, but, you know, what's it called, like trait-wise, you know, whatever type of card it is wise. And the reason why I say this is because Spinomarquis actually requires Dino Dragon specifically for both of his skills. And I say this because there will be times where you have to start relying on calling triggers for effects. How do I know this? I had to one time, and in fact, it was because of Steel Difolo I won the game. If this was Flare Veil, I would have lost that game, because thanks to me having Difolo, not only was I able to call it, I was able to kill rear guards because of it, and I was able to swing for game. So 4 of Difolo, very solid draw. Even if he doesn't have extra shield, he himself makes another card better in this deck a lot more consistent by simply being a Dino Dragon, so 4 of. Then we have 4 heals and White Light Dragon Parasolas. Grade 0 boost 15k shield, 5k power. It's the same argument as Difolo. You technically don't have to run Parasolas, but the more Dino Dragons you have, the better. And if you want to, you can run the heal guards. I don't remember, or not heal guards, the what's it called, the counter heals. But even if I wasn't going to run the Dino Dragon, I wouldn't run the counter heals personally because I don't like the fluctuating 10 to 25k shield. I much rather have a consistent 15k shield. But, you know, run as you wish, but I prefer the Dino Dragon line just in case, so 4 of Parasolas. Then move on to our grade 1s. First, we're going to 3 copies of Strong Sharp Dragon Guys for it. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, 8k base. I remember when I first put this deck together and I first saw Spinomarquis, I was like, where the fuck is Guys for? I know Guys for is going to be great for this. Auto back or rear guard circle, once per turn. When your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, stand this unit and it gets plus 2k for the turn. Armor pretty solid. Downside is he can't add to multi-attack, but he does fix the one problem a lot of multi-attack decks have, which is having consistent boosters, because sometimes you have to boost the first one because it's too weak, or sometimes you have to like wait out for the second one. Because you get to proc off when something is retired, regardless if it's by battle or some other means, you can stand him and he'll be a 10k booster. So all around pretty solid. I do miss the timing of Guys for a little bit because I'm not that great with this deck, but the fact that he can be a 10k booster and boost twice a turn is pretty solid. So he's a nice even 3 for me because he can do it all for free. And then we have 4 copies of the reason why I love this deck so much specifically, and the sole reason why Burning Fill is necessary as a safety net, and that is Acute Dragon E4-Ass. So grade 1, boost 5k shield, 8k base, auto rear guard circle. When this unit attacks or boosts into anything, Vanguard or rear guard, Soul Blast 1, and this unit gets plus 5,000 power for each of your other grade 1 rear guards sent to battle. I don't know how it happens, but every single time we get to 3rd grade 3 turn and beyond that, for some reason, when I played this deck, my board gets populated with grade 1s. And you know he becomes really helpful in that moment? Acute Dragon. And there's always 2 of them on 2 separate columns. This thing is like, I mean, okay, granted you can play it around in the early game to where it is a beat stick in the early game as well, but this thing in the late game is the sole reason why this deck like has a fucking ton of like offensive power. It's like I've been setting up for this the entire game, consistently filling my board with grade 1s. I'm not. It's just that it so happens to turn out that way, and it's beautiful. He turns into a giant beat stick, and the fist fight to the death suddenly turns into a goddamn club fight, and I love it. 4 of his 4-ass. It is an amazing grade 1. The second it comes down, it starts doing its job. Then we have 4 copies of RPG and Sparkle Rejector Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 0 k base, continuous Sentinel. You may have up to only 4 Sentinels in deck, and also put on Guard Circle. Choose one of you. It cannot be hit till end of battle. And if your hand has only 2 cards in it, choose a card from your hand, discard it. If it has 2 or more cards, then choose a card from discard it. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. Basically means if this and only one of the cards in your hand, you place on Guard Circle, you don't have to discard one, is great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and then when your opponent counterattacks you, you can just throw down the PG, and you're safe. You can give the opponent the middle finger, and especially because in this deck, you do want to go early game rush. Like, obviously, if your opponent has like a board new deck of their own, or maybe they're playing something like Sienna, which gets rid of your stuff, you definitely want to go early game rush and just like go with 4-ass, Guys for all the grade 2s, because the faster you put your opponent to high damage, the more deadly this deck gets. Like, if you put your opponent to 3 damage, this deck could technically go game. Technically, it can go game on a 1, because I have actually won when the opponent was at 1 damage before, but that was like, that took a lot of luck, and it took a lot of gambling, which it ended up working out, but still. So, 4 Sparkle Rejector Dragon, very good for helping deal with counterattacks, and all around a very solid PG. You can run Turnbuckler if you want because they have the exact same skill, but I prefer Sparkle Rejector Dragon because it came out close to the time of Spinomarquis' release/reveal. Next up, we have our last grade 1 in the main deck, 2 of in the ride deck, 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck, of Winged Dragon Pursutera. So, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto rear guard. When this unit boosts, Soul Blast 1 to choose one of your units that is being boosted until end of turn, it gets auto vanguard or rear guard. When this unit attack hits a vanguard, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and kill it. RM pretty solid, it adds rear guard pressure, and while it does kind of eat into the soul of Acute over here, Acute doesn't really go off to the late game, so you're fine. And, you know, being able to kill rear guards with an on-hit pressure is pretty solid. Now, if you're wondering why this is in the ride deck and not something else, there's no Dino Dragon grade 1 or 2 that actually has a Vanguard ability. I checked. I literally went through all the Dino Dragons. There was none of them that had a Vanguard ability. Which, again, is something I hate about D, that we don't get, like, you know, actual quote-unquote ride lines, even if they're for filler cards, or, like, we have generic ride lines fully out, because there is technically a generic ride line for Dragon Empire in the form of Shoujo Dojis, but that really requires a bunch of stealth units, and none of the Dino Dragons are stealth units, so yeah, I kind of avoided those for a reason, if any of them are all are stealth units. So 2 of in the main deck, you know, they're for the usability of being able to kill stuff, and then 1 of in the ride deck, which sadly you will never use, because even if you soul blast it out, there's no way to call it out from drop zone and deck, but I mean, A, it has rear guard targeting fodder, and it's a cool bird, and I like to run it as my starter. Plus, the way I like to think of this is, Surprise egg, assumed to be a dragon, hatches into a pterosaur instead. Then, by some miracle of God, it transforms into this thing, which finally evolves into this thing. I love thinking about it like that, like how it's just a constant evolution. I want to see Bushy make that official lore. Anyways, 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck for pressure. Then we move on to our grade 2s. 2 copies of the thing I keep forgetting is a grade 2, and I always treat it as a grade 1 whenever I play it on camera, and that is Armed Dragon Mount Cannon. Grade 2 is at 5k shield, 8k base, auto front or rear guard circle. When your grade 0 attacks, this unit and the unit that attacked get 5. I'm an idiot. They both get plus 5,000. Okay, so I ran this in the deck simply because I had literally no space left for anything else I wanted, so I was like, fuck it, let's just run it as a 2 of. But, and I keep forgetting it's a grade 1, or not a grade 1, because I always remember it has an 8k base, but it looks like a grade 1 to me, mainly because it looks like another copy of Guy Sport. Literally, they look almost exactly the same. But the thing I keep forgetting about this is, it's not just him that gets the 5k, it's the unit that attacks that gets the 5k. I'm so mad at myself because earlier today, because it's Thursday, October 5th at 6:52 p.m. right now, earlier today when I was doing the Sienna matchup against it with Spinomarquis, on an off-screen match, I had called Mount Cannon, and I called Difolo with a booster, and I swung with Difolo, and I gave Mount Cannon 5k, when in hindsight, I could have given both the 5k. Granted, it didn't matter because the attack went through anyways, I'm just making the point. But, being able to increase the trigger, well, most likely the trigger's power, but then also his own power just by simply a grade 0 swinging is great. He's not an amazing unit, but he is a Dino Dragon, so he does proc off Difolo, not Difolo, he does proc off Spinomarquis' skill, but also in the sense of he's just like acute, where when the late game starts coming around and you get desperate for the fight to the death, anything is a weapon, and this man can become a fucking weapon. Like, again, that's what I love about this deck. Like, the deck is meant to function well, but it gets so much better, like, the second we get to late game, because the second it gets to a bare knuckle fight to the death, if the opponent's remotely struggling at all, I promise you, you are going to win that fight to the death no matter how hard it is, because this deck will scrap to the fucking ends. I don't know why, because I don't sack triggers at all until the late game, but I tell you what, this deck does a good job of surviving to that point, so 2 of Mount Cannon. And we have 4 copies of Patrol's Dragon Scoop Terra, one of my favorite all-time grade 2s in Dragon Empire. Grade 2 is at 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard. When this unit is boosted and attacks into anything, by counterblasting 1, you can choose one of your opponent's grade 2 or greater rear guards and kill it, and this unit will give plus 2,000 power until the end of that battle. Arm pretty solid because while it's only a 12k base, it immediately murders a grade 2, and if we combine it with Gaze Fort, it immediately stands Gaze Fort, so if you don't want to use Spinal skill perfectly with it, you can do that. And it also can combo with Scoop Terra, which I sometimes do, to add on hit pressure, so now if they let this attack hit, they also lose another rear guard out of it. All-around Scoop Terror is a very solid grade 2. It kills rear guards. Granted, it has to be grade 2 or greater, but it can get rid of very important rear guards. And it's only a 12k with it swings, but with a booster, it's probably at least a 17. So, assuming that it's only a trigger that's boosting it, so 4 of Scoop Terror. And then we have our last grade 2, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck. Of again, sadly, a card that doesn't have a Vanguard skill, but it's pretty cool, and I still like to think of the transcending evolution of Surprise Egg hatching into Birdie of Death, somehow evolving into this thing, and then finally evolving into that. Because you can tell, because they all have guns. Anyways, Blast Artillery Dragon Brachio Force, grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear guard circle. When this unit's attack hits, retire this unit to draw a card and choose one of your opponent's rear guards and kill it. All around pretty solid because it adds on hit pressure, being able to call it down to board, and either they take this and they lose another rear guard and you get a draw, or they just guard it, or you swing into a rear guard with this because it doesn't have to hit a Vanguard, and they either take that rear guard and lose another rear guard on top of that, or they just guard it. Either way, though, adds guard pressure, and I love it because it can help wipe out the opponent's rear guards all for free and very consistently. It's a nice card 4 of. Or, sorry, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck, but you get my point. Then we move on to our grade 3s. 2 copies of Roaring Cannon Dragon Salvo Rex. Man, that would have been such a badass name for a card that had any Vanguard skill whatsoever, but Bushy Big Bushy indeed. Let's not give anything that doesn't have to be a main grade 3 a Vanguard skill, even if it's just on play, CB1, get a crit and a draw for the turn. No, that actually would have been a fine skill. If they just gave that thing that skill on plays, Vanguard Circle, hard ones per turn, combos 1, give itself a crit for the turn because, I don't know, maybe they found a way to make it abusable in the future. I honestly would have been fine with that, but no, screw that. They are not allowed to give things Vanguard abilities that aren't main grade 3s. Anyways, grade 3 turn persona 13k base, continuous rear guard circle during your turn, this unit gets plus 10k, and if your opponent has a front or rear guard, this unit cannot attack a Vanguard. So it's like Hunger Source, the grade 2, which got 5k, but if they have a front row, it has to swing at it. But on the bright side, 23k beat stick, that gets to swing at either a Vanguard or a rear guard. All around pretty solid. It combos well with Spinomarquis too, because Spinomarquis kills a column, combos well with this thing, which is going to kill other rear guards. This thing's a 23k beast, so it gets to go free at Vanguard. So All around Salvo Rex is pretty amazing. He doesn't do that much against decks that can spam out rear guards easily or has like the ability to protect the rear guards by giving them resist or nullify death abilities. Bash and Accord. But you know, against decks that can't consistently bring out rear guards or defend them in the front row, it's a pretty giant basic that you like to have, but you don't want to see too many of it. So 2 of Salvo Rex, especially because not Difol Morales. I don't know why I keep wanting to call Difolas aka this thing, Difolo, Spinomarquis, and vice versa. You know, in hindsight, I'm starting to think of it lore-wise in my head that this is actually him, but just evolved. Anyways, Salvo Rex is a nice 2 if you don't want to see it too often, but you don't want to see it too little either. Then we have 3 copies of Penetrating Dragon Tribash, grade 3 Generic Persona, 13k base. Auto rearguard circle when your Vanguard attacks. If your opponent has 2 or less rearguards, by putting this unit to your soul, choose one of your Vanguards, it gets a crit for the battle. You can use it before your Vanguard uses its skill. You can use it when your Vanguard uses its skill. It's literally just a free extra crit to Van, and that is something I love to have, because when you're swinging with a 23k Vanguard who now has double crit and then has another attack following after it at the very least, and probably another attack after that, it's pretty great, and this is why like the deck does really good in the early game, because while your opponent is still trying to gather hands for guarding and aggressing later, when you swing at your Vanguard for 23 double critical, they're either forced to PG it or drop 2 cards regardless on it, or unless they take it and they pretty much go to 4 from this. So all-around Tribash is really good for early game pressure. Late game pressure doesn't do that much because typically this deck will push you to 5 and then Tribash kind of does nothing. But again, that's where this thing comes in handy, and it's just a scrap to the death. So 3 of Tribash, very solid in the early game, and it acts as retire fodder if you need it, and it gets to go to Soul, which ends up adding fuel for this thing once the late game starts going. So 3 of. And then we have the last card in the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of our main grade 3, my boy, the man, the myth, the legend, the absolute Chad that brought back the Takikaze, Steel Baron Dragon, Spinomarquis. Grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, not 9, but 10 whole guns on him! Look at him! He has 10 magnificent guns ready to barrel into your ass! Anyways, 2 skills. Auto, when placed on the Vanguard circle, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose 2 down dragons from them, call to rear guard, and shuffle your deck. I love it. They don't have to be triggers. They don't have to be normal units. So, worst case scenario, you can call down triggers if you need to. You get to call down these guys. Typically, I tend to hit at least 1 copy of Tribash off this. Like, the possibilities are endless, and the fact that it gives you 2 rear guards for free is great. The only thing I could ask for more is I drew him more consistently so I could Persona Ride into him more often than just check top 7 more cards. And there's other skills. Auto Vanguard. When he attacks into a Vanguard, again, not a hard once per turn, so if you send him via the over, it does proc off again. Counterblast 1 and retire Dino Dragon Rearguard to draw a card, and then he'll get plus 10k for that battle. So 23k and a free draw. Then you can shoot up to 1 Dino Dragon from your hand and call it to the rearguard circle. And if you do, retire all your opponent's rearguards in the same column as that called unit. So what I like to do is I typically like to use Scoop Terra, boosted by Gaze Fort. Scoop Terra kills something in the opposite column, but not the column directly opposing it. Hopefully the thing right in front of it doesn't have intercept, and if it doesn't, so be it, but hopefully it doesn't. Then my opponent guards it, and then Gaze Fort gets to stand because 2k. Then I swing with Spinomarquis, I kill Gaze Fort. Let's just say I draw a card, I get plus 10, and I call Salvo Rex, and I use Salvo Rex as the target from Spinomarquis' skill in order to kill the column directly opposing him, and then boom, my opponent probably doesn't have a front row anymore. All around, Spinomarquis is great. He kills rear guards, he gets numbers, he gets multi-attack, all for the cost of a CB, and then he literally gets you 2 rear guards for free just by being placed. All around, very solid grade 3. Unlike, in my opinion, where Timestamp felt like he needed to, where you can't like build a consistent deck focused on the theme of it, Bushy made sure that even though Dino Dragons are just a bunch of scrap cards, like how a bunch of Steam cards are for Dark States, they made sure that this guy focused well on the Dino Dragons. He focused well on getting them on the board. He focused well as turning them into ammo like old Takikaze did. They did great. Honestly, if they gave us a ride line and 1 support card, I would legit be happy. Hell, they could just give me a ride line and I'd be happy. And I don't care how generic it is. If they give us one that fits the theme, I'm cool with it. Hell, if they could even have like just no Vanguard skills outside of like the ones from Graham Grace and Favrenil, and then they can just be like rear guards, like they get plus 2k at the Vanguard Spinomarquis, and I'd honestly be down for that because they beat Dino Dragons and they make them targets for Spinomarquis. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is very fun to play. Even though it doesn't have like a real rod line, again, I always feel like I'm playing with like, you know, some prize eggs turning into this thing, turning into this thing, then turning into this thing. It feels great, like the progression of firepower. It feels like it does well. It it keeps like the thing that I liked about the game all the way back when I first started and a little bit into G alive, where it's like somewhat a struggle at the beginning, and then it like is a back and forth, and then at the very end it is literally just a bare knuckled fist fight to the death, where the winner comes out on top, and it's a fight that's earned to the death, not a fight that's won off of like triggers, though it can be aided by triggers. Alright, I just love playing it, and I literally cannot wait to see where they go with this one next. I love Spinomarquis, and I'm so glad they actually did this. So I'm this one here. I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, don't forget to follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.